G'day guys, Dane here from Clarkie's NRL column. I'm joined by Oliver from NRL In My Opinion. If you watch the Set of Six podcast, this background's familiar, but we do have a little bit of a different video today, guys. This is the Round 6 wrap-up, and this is a bit of an extended episode. I've been keeping these around the 20-minute mark. We'll go a bit longer today and talk about the games a little bit more so in depth. Before we do so, Oliver, how are you this evening?
I'm doing pretty well, champion. Yourself?
Very well. Straight off 12-hour shift at work, still in my grey t-shirt, but I was looking forward to this all day and took my notes. So we'll start off with the first game. The Sharkies come from behind and they defeat the Penrith Panthers 24-20. Some stuff I've got written down here for the Sharks. I'll start with them. I thought it was a gritty display, and I thought it was a superb team effort in particular. To come back from that sort of deficit at halftime, look, their first 40 was very poor. But one thing I've been saying all season is I feel like the Sharks, on their day, they have too much X factor, and I feel like they can beat any team. I think that second 40 minutes and the fact they put together, that performance, I think it further backs up my stance that, the Sharks can really beat anyone in this competition on their day. What did you think of that game watching the Sharkies?
Oh, the Sharks were great in the second half, definitely. As you said, they are, for me, now a top four side. They've convinced me of that. Although they had a couple of poor weeks, I think that they've got the talent there. They still had players playing great individually, but in that second half, they definitely came together as a team. And I guess sort of leaning more towards Penrith, although it was a great effort by Cronulla. I think the story here is how Penrith was so poor in that second half. You know what I mean?
Oftentimes you see a great comeback like the Sharkies had, and the focus is purely on the team that was able to come back, how spectacular they played. But you're absolutely right. The general consensus and sort of comments among fans are more so how much Penrith sucked than Cronulla were great. So some stuff I've got written down here for Penrith. I feel like I could be a little bit too critical, and I have written a couple columns on them in the last couple of weeks. But I feel with the New South Wales Blues, there's a level of expectation with this team. They have a host of rep stars, arguably the best forward pack in the competition, and it's just not clicking at the moment. Look, Thursday night was just shocking and terrible. Their attack gets a pass for me, and that's only the second time this season I've been able to give them a pass. I gave them a pass against the Titans, and in this game also. But defensively, there's some serious issues there. They missed 46 tackles on Thursday night, and the week before that against us, they missed 67. That's just not good enough. It's extremely alarming for that statistic and many other negatives. They sit at the top, which is obviously where you don't want to be. And I'll briefly go back to attack. That has been improving, but if I had to sort of pinpoint where it struggled, I feel Ivan Cleary has come into this side and he's really trying to make Nathan the main man. He wants Nathan to be the orchestrator, he wants him to be the director, and he also wants him to implement a running game because we're still seeing Cleary take the line on. And then that's sort of left James Maloney, who's gone from at the Warriors, the main man, takes him to the grand final. The Roosters, maybe not the main man. Him and Mitchell Pearce were pretty even there, but again, wins a premiership. And then the Sharks. For me, he was the dominant half there. He ran the show, wins a premiership. And they've sort of just relegated Maloney to the one side. And I didn't notice this so much, but I really did focus on Maloney in this game. He sits on one side and he only injects himself into the game when the ball comes. We go back to his time at Cronulla and he was a genuine orchestrator, Oz. He was out the back barking instructions. You're here. I'm popping up here. I don't care if it's the left side, the right side, the wing, the center of the field. I'm popping up, I'm injecting myself into the back line, and I'm going to create something special. He's not able to do that with this current Panthers formation. So I'll get some comments from the Panthers on you, but I've also got to ask, do you feel the Panthers may be using Maloney incorrectly here, or is Maloney getting a bit on in his career?
I think he needs to be a bit more influential in the side. He's the leader there, especially with his experience and the fact that he's in the halves. It does seem a lot more like the attention is on Cleary, and Cleary might be getting a bit too much control, as you said as well. For me, with the Panthers though, a big area that they need to improve on is not their backs just in the halves, but the back five as well. I mean, I'm sorry, Josh Mansour could almost be dropped, and I'd be okay with it.
Yep.
He has not looked good ever since he got. I think it was a knee injury. He never jumps for the ball. When there's a kick, the ball's coming towards him. He never jumps for it,
Yep.
and half the time the opposition end up scoring from that. You know what I mean? And just the mistakes as well. Of course, Dylan Edwards was going really bad as well. We've seen that for a few weeks, and then Mansour as well. Zalesniak not as much, but he needs to be playing a bit better. I felt it was a bit better when he got moved to fullback. Malachi Vateni-Zalesniak was okay, I thought. Yep. But I think they need a bit of a shift in that back five. And, I think Mansour might have to get the drop. I mean, he's really not performing. We talk about confidence with players a fair bit. Josh Mansour is one of those players. It's not affecting him as much. But as I said, when that high ball is coming for him, his job is to jump for it and to secure that ball so that the opposition doesn't score. That's his main role in being a winger when that ball is coming to him. He doesn't do that. He's lacking the confidence. He needs to build some confidence there. But just in Penrith in general, look, I've got that stat of the 46 missed tackles as well. But for me, Penrith need to be more clinical and a bit more disciplined. They gave away 7 penalties to the Sharks too. I felt that really didn't help them. And, the Sharks actually had more errors than Penrith. Penrith just, especially in that second half, weren't really taking advantage. It seems to me with Penrith, when they have an opportunity close to the line, when they get the ball close to the line, they are terrible at goal line attack. They just don't seem to be able to get the ball across the line. I seem to be more confident that Penrith will score from making a break within their own half than actually if they've got a scrum 10 metres out from the opposition's line. They really need to work on that goal line attack because they need to be more clinical. Statistically, it hasn't really happened this year, but in the past, I've not been surprised if Penrith have been the better team statistically, but still lost because they've been given so many opportunities, but they're just not clinical enough. They actually really need to work on their goal line attack, which is something that a lot of teams are pretty much fine with. The only other team that sort of jumps out to me, I guess, that's pretty poor at that, was pretty poor at that, was the Titans. But yeah, with Penrith, for me, more clinical and more disciplined.
Yeah, you touched on the penalties there, and I like the fact that you said that the Sharks had more errors. I feel the Sharks were really able to jump on the back of those penalties and really gain the momentum of the game and sort of switch it towards their favour. On what you're saying with Mansour, you'll have no arguments from me. I would definitely say if Tyrone Phillips hadn't resigned from that club and Christian Crichton was still there, given their form in 2018 and how they were able to come in and replace Dallin and Mansour and not look out of place, I would say Mansour potentially might be dropped for them. And you're right, he has never been the same under the high ball since copping the knee from Anthony Don. As for the goal line attack, one more question I want to pose to you quickly before we move on to stat attack. Do you think Maloney sort of not having that influence over the side that Cleary has at the moment, do you think that's affecting their goal line attack? Because for me, I think it is definitely.
Yeah, and you can see when they do get the ball out, when they actually do manage to create something, it usually leads to a mistake. They usually seem to not know what to do when they are there. So it is definitely about the mindset of the halves as well, because, I mean, they get the ball. I generally go to Penrith home games. This is why I really pick it up, this goal line attack, because they really never look like doing anything. You'll see, one of the halves get the ball, whether it's Cleary or Maloney, right near the line. There'll be space. There'll be like a 3-on-2, 3-on-1 scenario in Penrith's favour, over on the right-hand side, but they just won't look for that, and they'll go to the left. They'll just do the short pass to the closest forward, and they just run up and get tackled straight away. And generally they do complete the set, but they don't get over the line. Sure, they might force a dropout, but you can't keep forcing dropouts. You've got to actually make something. And I think it was against the Tigers, there was, they kept forcing the dropouts. I think it was late in the game, and obviously it did end up coming off with Dylan Edwards scoring. But I tell you what, they should have scored like 5 times late in that game. So it definitely does come down to the halves because they've got to create the plays, right? They've got to create the holes in the defense, and they're just not doing that. They're not looking for smart options. They're just going with the safe option: grab the ball, maybe pass it to the closest player, or just try something absolutely have a brain snap and just throw the ball out, and it'll get intercepted or whatever. It's just coming down to smarts because it's not that hard of a situation to score 10 meters out. And a lot of teams prove that it isn't that hard a situation because generally they are clinical. Penrith is one of those teams that definitely are not.
Yeah. I'll say two more quick things before we move on. I would be interested to see the stats as far as decoy runs go. This is something I looked into a little bit. I know Tigers were at the top, and they were second last year, and their attack does look improved this year. And I know you're probably thinking, what's he bringing up the Tigers for? How does this fall into it all? Well, it's Ivan Cleary as the coach. We saw him last year with the Tigers, and typically they did sort of struggle a little bit because they didn't have those decoy runs, and in turn that wasn't opening up, as you just touched on, the gaps in the defensive line. With Michael Maguire, he recognised that as a weakness, and now the Tigers' attack looks a lot better, and they are at the top of the they top the statistic for decoy runs implemented in a game. We go to the Panthers, and I wouldn't hesitate to say they're probably around the bottom, like the Tigers were last year, because Ivan Cleary is their coach. And I think offensively as a coach, Ivan Cleary doesn't offer too much. Look, I'll finish by saying this side looked a lot better last year under Hook Griffin. We'll move on to stat attack, guys. The stat attack's just a little statistic that Oliver and I have pulled from the stats for each game. The one I found very interesting, I think this backs up my my comments on Sharks having a lot of X Factor odds. 14-2 in the offloads department towards the Sharks. I think that's massive. 14 offloads in one game.
Yeah, 100%. And I guess that talks as well on Penrith's stamina. They look in the second half, they looked like they were getting a bit tired. The Sharks found this as an opportunity to throw the ball around. Penrith just couldn't keep up, creating the gaps, and it was a lot easier for the Sharks. So definitely in that second half as well, when the Panthers were getting a bit tired, and that can attribute to those penalties that they gave away as well. Bit tired, not putting in as much effort, a little bit more ill-disciplined, as I said. So, that was smart footy by the Sharks. Throwing the ball around a bit more, noticing, hey, these guys are tired. We might be able to create something here. And they did, and it paid off in the end.
Do you have anything in particular for your stat attack? Anything you saw in the stats you really want to highlight?
Oh, look, something that we brought up before, Penrith's missed tackles. 46 missed tackles. That as well can go down to that tiredness, that laziness, not putting in the effort, and that discipline that we're talking about. That, not much urgency.
Yeah, well said. Now, we have been a little bit negative in this segment, guys, so we're going to finish each game's comments with a like from both sides. So for the Cronulla Sharks, I liked Bronson Sherry's first NRL try. The way he got around Dallin Watene-Zelezniak was superb. It was exciting to watch, even more so given I had a couple hundred on him to score. So I certainly loved watching that one. What did you like from the Sharkies?
I like another rookie coming through, Britt Nakora. He's been amazing this year. Look, I think he may make a New Zealand debut. He may make a Kiwis debut. I mean, I can't see any reason why not so far. He's been one of the most integral parts of their front row so far this season. And for a Cronulla Sharks side, with the likes of Andy Fafita in the team, that's saying something.
Yep, especially considering the calibre of players he's replacing. I mean, he's replacing Wade Graham and Luke Lewis, two of the greatest back rowers that were in our game, in the case of Lewis. One thing for Nakora, I believe he's got a one-match suspension from that game, so that's unfortunate. But if he avoids suspension for the rest of the year, I believe 2 suspension rules you out. Assuming he avoids that second suspension, for me, he's the Rookie of the Year. For the Panthers, it was really hard to pick something, guys, but I liked their improved attack, and I'm hoping their defense comes next. What did you like from the Panthers?
I can't really disagree there, and I can't really find anything else. They looked pretty good in the first half. I mean, there's not much more I can say about it. Hey, it was just dreadful in the second half, and it's hard to really think about what they only lost by 4 points, was it? Where ragging on a team that's only just lost by 4 points. And, for a little bit of a preview for later on, we're probably going to be a bit more kind to the Tigers, who lost by 45 points. First half we saw Penrith, I'd say, almost at their best.
Yep.
They looked really good, but I mean, that second half, they just can't put a full 80 together.
Not at this stage. We will move on to Friday night footy, guys. So the South Sydney Rabbitohs defeat the Canterbury Bulldogs 14-6. We'll start with the Rabbitohs. I think the Rabbitohs at this stage of the season, under Wayne Bennett's new formations, etc., they're still far from their best. But at this stage of the season, and given they are equal first, a win is a win. I feel they have lost a little bit of flair out wide in recent weeks, with Braden Burns being out injured. And you're probably thinking, Clarky, you've had a couple weeks to mention that. Why are you bringing it up now? Well, that's because I never raised it as an issue, because we were expecting Greg Inglis to slot in there any week.
Yeah.
Now we know Greg Inglis isn't going to return there. Having Braden Burns missing becomes a bigger issue for the Rabbitohs. I'm not sure how many weeks away he is from returning. But with Greg Inglis out now, they desperately need a little bit of attacking flair out wide. I think Burns can provide that. But I still think they need to be looking. They need to be looking to spend Greg Inglis's money now. Their premiership window is now, 2019 or 2020. Bennett's only at the club until the end of 21. I'd say by the end of 2021, we're seeing players like the Burgess brothers all coming towards the tail end of their career. So their window is now, and I'd really hate to see them hang on to that cash and sort of hope something opens up in the market. I'd like to see them chase someone now and go direct. That was a little bit away from match comments, so I do apologise for rambling on there. I'll go to you, Oz. What did you like, or what did you see from the Rabbitohs?
The Rabbitohs, I really liked the forward pack. I guess, I'll probably bring it up as my stat attack as well. 530 post-contact meters. They were really getting down the ground. And, I like seeing that from the forward pack. The likes of Sam Burgess, although, Lockie Lewis, Lewis was like a bulldog in this game, I guess, against Sam Burgess.
Brave.
Yeah, he was brave. The forward pack, the Burgess boys, I mean, that was the standout for me for South Sydney, just those post-contact meters. They were gaining ground, and, that's probably what edged them over the Bulldogs in the end for me.
Yeah, I'll move on to the Doggies now. Only 6 points, so I guess it can go down as another lackluster performance for that side. As you touched on, Lockie Lewis and the side, there's no doubt they're brave, they're courageous, they're putting in the effort, the enthusiasm is there, they want to win. But I just think their inexperienced halves just can't offer enough in attack at the moment. Yeah. But that's no personal stripe or anything against the club, because I do think they're going to continue to slowly improve. And at this stage, Doggies fans, I wouldn't rule out a finals finish. I just wouldn't. I'm not seeing much from the club at the moment, but I'm not seeing anything that would make me rule them out instantly right now. I still think the more experience Lockie Lewis gets in particular, Jack Cogger also, but to a lesser extent, Jeremy Marshall-King in his new role as the full-time hooker, the more experience they get, the more dangerous the Doggies are going to get as the year goes on. What do you got for the Doggies?
For the Doggies, really poor in defence. They are looking a lot better, especially since they made those changes with the likes of Martin and Ockenbaugh coming in and Meaney. But their defence for me let them down, and I guess those post-contact meters from South Sydney sort of mirror that, and South Sydney's attack. But I'll get to it more specifically in my stat attack. Yep. But the Dogs, their defence was pretty poor.
Okay, let's move on to stat attack. Something you touched on, their defense being poor. Well, they missed 45 tackles to Rabbitohs 15. I suppose, having missed 45 tackles but only leaking 2 tries, I think that confirms my earlier comments that their enthusiasm and their intent is there. Just a little bit of inexperience throughout the squad, not just in attack but also in defense. And onto your stat attack, if I can just touch on it again, how many post-contact meters? Because I believe you said over half a kilometre.
530, yeah.
That is insane. Nuts. That is absolutely insane, guys. So for those that are watching that might not understand how post-contact meters work, you take the ball to the line, you get your first contact from the defender, and the leg drive and how further you drive the ball up the field is that stat. So for over half a kilometre, guys, the Rabbitohs have dragged Bulldogs defenders up the field with them. That is very impressive. I'll move over to you to go more in depth with that with your stat attack, though.
Yeah, so with the which one, Bulldogs or Rabbitohs? Still on the Rabbitohs there?
Just for stat attack, just general stats from the game, or just
Sure.
one or two that you really want to highlight.
Yeah. So for my stat attack for the Rabbitohs was that 530 post contact meters.
Yeah.
Not much more I can say on that. However, I haven't seen the individual player stats. However, I would take it that Sam Burgess and Cam Murray would have got a few of those meters. The Dogs as well. It's those 45 missed tackles. I mean, as you said, the intent's there, the enthusiasm's there. They didn't lose by that much. They only let 2 tries in. So I think, if they can work on their defence a bit more, they're going to have closer games than that. They might win a couple of games, Maybe if they can work on that defence, faults in their attack might not get punished as much. They might be able to, excuse a bit of poor attack, but they do have to work on that defence. What is it? Defence, I think someone in the NFL said it or something, defence wins championships. And, I guess, obviously, I don't see the Bulldogs being a premiership contender, but the way that they're playing, if they work on the defence a bit, I think they can get a few more W's in the season.
Yeah, just quickly, Bulldogs, top 8. Have you still got them there?
Well, I didn't have them there in the first place. I had them contending for the 8 in 9th. I wouldn't have been surprised. However, now I'm more a believer that they're sort of in the same position as a Cowboys or a Broncos. So around, I've got it here. I've got them 14th. For me, they've dropped down a fair bit. However, I think they will improve. It'll be similar to last year. I think they are in a really similar position to the Broncos, where there's a lot of youth, a lot of inexperience.
Yep.
Once they get a bit more, cohesion, a bit more experience, I think they'll be fine. I think I've had people ask me in Q&As and that, who do the Bulldogs need to sign? And I've honestly thought about it, and I thought, well, they don't really need to be signing anyone. The talent's there. They've just got to get a bit more experience. And then the team that they've got in a year or two could be a top 8 side.
Yeah, I think we're both under the agreement that the Bulldogs will continue to improve as the season goes on. Let's go to what we liked. I'll start with the Rabbitohs. You touched on him earlier. I liked Cam Murray. He had the second most meters behind Sam Burgess and the second most tackles for his club. He's still, I believe, 21 years of age. Putting in performances like that are so influential for a young forward nonetheless. To me, has all the traits of a future captain of the Rabbitohs.
Yeah, definitely. If he stays at the club, for me, it's the man that you mentioned, Sam Burgess. As I said, a lot of those post-contact meters would have been coming through Sam or Cam Murray. At the moment, well, he's the captain now. Sam Burgess is that leader, and probably in a few years' time, he's going to be handing that captaincy down to Cam Murray, possibly.
Yeah,
I see a lot of similarities between the two as well.
Yeah, me too. I'll stay on you. Bulldogs, what did you like?
Bulldogs, we mentioned it before. The effort's there, the urgency's there. Obviously, they didn't lose by that much.
Yep.
But it was that defence that let them down. As I said, they just got to work on that defence. However, I did like the effort was there.
Yeah.
Which we didn't see from a couple other teams this week, which we will get onto.
My Bulldogs guys, before we move on to the next game. Well, I like Jaden Ockenbaugh. This is the 4th week in a row he's ran for over 120 metres. And since he's come into the side, these are his metres each game. 214, 290 against the Melbourne Storm, arguably the best defensive team. 132 metres and 120. Statistically he had his worst game against the Bunnies, but 120 metres from a winger, that's a great effort. And,
that's Blake Ferguson numbers.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I've got written down. It reminds me of a young Blake Ferguson on the wing there. Let's move on to arguably the game of the round, my game of the round. The Sydney Roosters defeat the Melbourne Storm in an Amy Park thriller. 21-20, guys. For the Roosters, what I've gotten down here, I thought they were very impressive. Now, they were missing a number of key players not just in the forward pack. They had to debut 2 forwards. You think they were missing Jake Friend, their best defender, and they were missing Joey Manu, one of their best attacking weapons. For them to put on that sort of performance with a number of stars out, I think they're still the benchmark side of this competition. If it wasn't Latrell Mitchell, it would have been James Tedesco, or it would have been Luke Keary, or it would have been Cooper Cronk, or it would have been Jared Rea-Hargraves crashing over for his second. This side just has so many stars that are ready to step up at any moment, and overall, just so impressed by this Roosters outfit. Since round one, they haven't missed a beat. Missing key players, they've missed Cooper Cronk, they missed their captain Jake Friend, but they haven't missed a beat. They're superb. They're the benchmark team. There's not too much more I can say there, guys. Anything you'd like to add for the Roosters, though, Oz?
I guess because, I agree with everything you said. I guess I'll go with a little bit of a negative from this one. Now, if you do look at the stats, which we will get into soon, Melbourne probably had the better it was very close. So probably just had the better of a lot of the stats. One thing that did stand out to me, though, a little bit by the Roosters was a little bit of ill discipline. They gave away 10 penalties, which, against the Storm, the Roosters, maybe you can excuse it because it is the Roosters, but for a lot of teams, you give away 10 penalties against the Storm, you're not going to have a great day at the office. So that's just a little something that they need to work on. But in this one, it didn't really affect them that much. So it was just like something that stood out to me a little bit. They might need to get their discipline under control a bit. So Coop's probably got to, help calm the boys down.
Yep.
And the likes of Boyd Cordner and, just get them playing clean, a bit more clean.
Yeah, no arguments from me there. We'll move on to the Melbourne Storm. What I've got written down here, guys, Smith is still the best player in the game. I know that could be considered a little bit controversial, but to orchestrate a 20-point comeback through the middle like he did against the reigning premiers, arguably the best defensive team of the NRL, is nothing short of amazing. And for the Storm as a whole, to have your first loss of the season, a 1-point loss to the reigning premiers, there's absolutely no shame. I understand they'll be very disappointed. I understand, it's not the result they wanted, but there's still a lot of positives they can take out of a game like that. And in particular, as I touched on, a 20-point comeback was remarkable. Anything for you for the Storm?
For me, they were probably a bit poor in the first half, and obviously they came back in the second half. But for me, if we probably just saw a bit more of the Melbourne Storm that we're used to in the first half, I'd say they get the win. So it's a bit unfortunate for me. However, in that second half, Bellamy's obviously put a rocket up their backside. But it's just a bit of a shame for me that we didn't see it a bit more in the first half, because honestly, if we saw a little bit more from Melbourne in the first half, they probably would have come away with the win.
Yeah, I actually hadn't considered that, but you're definitely right with that. For my stat attack, I don't have anything in particular, guys, but as you highlighted earlier, I'll go into a little bit more depth. Now, it was close, but the Storm won every single positive stat you want to be winning. I'm talking meters, offloads, less missed tackles, higher possession, higher completion rate. They won all of those key stats you want to be winning to win a football game. And I'm not exaggerating that, guys. If you go through and look at the stats, literally everything you want to be winning and everything you don't want to be winning, the Storm were on the right side of the bed. But to me, that just highlights the Roosters' championship mentality. They are the reigning premiers for a reason. And, in a game against your stiffest competition, the Storm, at the Storm's home ground, to be behind on all the stats but still pull away from a win, I can only put that down to championship mentality. What have you got for us for your stat attack?
For Melbourne, okay, we talked about South Sydney having 530 post-contact metres. Hold on, ladies and gentlemen. Melbourne, 559 post-contact metres.
Wow.
Yep. We know they've got a great side across the pitch, but generally the forward pack doesn't get as much, I guess, props as they should. Yeah, a little bit of a pun there, but 559 post contact meters against a Roosters side with generally a pretty good forward pack as well. But I guess that could be put down to, for the Roosters, they had those couple of debutants come in as well, so it would have been a bit of a hard day at the office trying to defend against the likes that Melbourne have. As a stat attack for the Roosters though, 31 missed tackles, which I guess aligns with that a bit as well. So work on that a bit. However, they didn't have a full strength squad, especially in the forward pack. So I don't look into that too much. But in this game in particular, and that just goes to show with the Roosters, that championship mentality as well. Generally, if you miss 31 tackles against Melbourne, generally you don't win. But the Roosters came away with it. So
yeah, well, no arguments from me there at all. Let's finish on a positive note, Oz. Let's go to our likes. For the Roosters, I liked Latrell Mitchell stepping up. as one Indigenous legend, Greg Inglis, announces his retirement this week. The next superstar steps up. He slots a field goal from 40 out, and his name is Latrell Mitchell. I thought that was absolutely fantastic. What I didn't find fantastic was when I was doing a Q&A yesterday, someone said, get Latrell on. I tagged him. I said, Latrell, we want you on. He bloody seen it, but he hasn't gotten back to me. So I don't think we're getting Latrell on, but he's a superstar nonetheless. What did you like for the Roosters?
I mean, I've got to say Latrell as well because he was that good in the game. Mm-hmm. I mean, he's gone from being one of their great players to someone, when there are a few players out, you can trust him to really step up, which is what he did, obviously. Oh, yeah. But I guess to sort of change it up a bit, Keary and Cronk pretty much looked on point as well. I mean, there's not too much extra you can say about the Roosters, who are generally just a great side. But I guess one more thing to add, they had those players out. The stats were not on their side, but they still pulled out the victory against Melbourne in Melbourne. So that's just one great thing for the Roosters.
No doubt. And for the Storm, what I liked Cameron Smith. I think he's still the best player in the game. I'll keep it simple. What did you like for the Storm?
I've got to go their forward pack in general. As I said, I've got to go back to those 559 post-contact meters. That's absolutely insane. I know the weakened forward pack, but I mean, that's still just amazing. And props to the forward pack.
We'll move on, guys, to I believe we're on to Saturday footy now. A little bit of a different round with the Easter Monday clash that we've just watched, but the Cowboys get their season back on track. They go to New Zealand and they defeat the Warriors 17-10. We'll start with the Cowboys, guys. Look, this was a much-needed win for the Cowboys. That's not sugarcoating it. That's not deviating from the truth. It is absolutely on point. They needed this win in some ways to almost resurrect their season because they were so low on confidence. The Cowboys team we were seeing is nothing like we know they're capable of with such a great forward pack and Michael Morgan there, of course. They weren't great. I'm not going to go out and pretend that this was an amazing performance in their back. But they were good enough to take a win. And that's a start for the Cowboys. And that's something they can begin to work on as the season develops. One area I think the Cowboys are really lacking, and it was also highlighted again, is their back three. They're not getting enough from their wingers, and they're not getting enough from their fullback. When you compare their entire back three, now I have written a column on this. I can't remember off the top of my head who they were. If you could help me out here. Ben Hampton, Tamir Martin, and their other winger is...
Moment, because McDonald's...
Sorry, my computer's so slow and just had a little bit of a hissy fit. Who did you say there, sorry?
Kahu?
I believe he's playing in the centres.
In the centres?
Yeah. Actually, I'm going to quickly jump on the NRL app here. I'm going to pause the show, guys. If I'm able to do that, the viewers at home won't crucify me. And I'm going to check who their other winger is. It was Justin O'Neill, guys. Let's go through the run meters here. We had Justin O'Neill, 120. We had 77 from Hampton, and we had 50 from Tamir Martin. And then we go to the Warriors back three, 168 from RTS, 162 from Amalo, and 132 from Fusatua. The Cowboys just aren't getting enough bang for their buck from their back three at the moment.
I mean, for me, Justin O'Neill did look good in this game individually, but that was the really only highlight from their back five for me, because generally Justin O'Neill, he probably put in a bit of a better performance than he usually does. So that sort of just stood out to me. I remember watching and go, oh, Justin O'Neill's actually going all right in this one. But for the rest of them, I couldn't tell you. I don't remember anything from any of them.
Well, you are right. If you take Justin O'Neill out, none of their back three ran for over 100 metres, which is obviously super concerning when we look at some of the best back threes. Kalen Ponga, over 200. Blake Ferguson, often over 200. We just saw three from the Warriors that were all up over 150. When you compare them with some of the best, it's pretty concerning. Anything you have for the Cowboys from this one?
For the Cowboys, look, it was good to see them get to the win. However, I did think that they were still a bit poor, and the Warriors were just absolutely dreadful. I mean, as I was watching it, Morgan still doesn't seem to be playing, how he used to play, I guess you could say. I'm being a bit negative here, aren't I? But I mean,
Yeah.
I just didn't see that many good things from the Cowboys. As I was watching it, I more thought, well, the Warriors are just playing terrible and the Cowboys are getting a bit lucky. But I mean, a win's a win. A win can do you the world of confidence. So going on from here, I can't remember off the top of my head who they're versing next week. But, if they have confidence going into their next game, it could bring out a bit of a better performance, yeah.
On to the Warriors, 10 points now. If you thought you were being critical, you're going to have to just prepare yourself for this. I'm actually going to pause the show for a second time in this thing, and I'm going to put on my cranky hat, Oz. My cranky hat is LSM, Lombardi Sports Management. It's not usually my cranky hat, but it's the nearest hat available. And before I begin, it's from my mate Luke Lombardi. He's an accredited player agent. You can follow him on Instagram at LSM Lombardi Sports. Now the cranky hat's on. I've given my mate a plug. Just terrible. Shocking from the Warriors. Now, I'm going to refer to round 1 and the calls that were made towards me. Because I said I tipped the Warriors for the spoon, and I said they will lose round 1 to the Bulldogs. And then all the Warriors fans came out. Clarkey, you're an Aussie flog. You don't know football. You know nothing. And I said, guys, have you forgotten the past decade? Your team is wildly inconsistent and your coach sucks. And then they laughed at me some more. And then they went on a 3-game losing streak. And then everyone come around from the Warriors. Oh, maybe Clarkey does make some sense. And I want to ask this question to Stephen Kearney. Why the hell did you have Adam Kieran in reserve grade when Blake Green was racing the clock to be fit? Why would you not carry your second string halfback in at least the reserves when we saw Peter Hiku is in the halfback's ass the week before? In fact, he's absolutely terrible. He should just remain out in the centres because he has no game management. He doesn't offer a kicking game. He doesn't offer taking the ball to line. He offers under 10s, catch and pass footy. So I've got a serious gripe with Kearney here, and as to why you would not include Kieran in that reserve list. I think that is absolutely appalling. Yeah. I think it's a ludicrous decision, and I'd love to know what the hell he was thinking. Because we know groin injuries don't disappear in 5 days. So there was a good chance Blake Green was going to be ruled out again. And I think Kearney is a terrible coach. I don't know if the Warriors have re-signed him yet. I think they may have, which is probably the dumbest thing they can ever do. And if you don't believe me, here's the stats. At the Parramatta Reels, he had a 24% win rate. At the Warriors currently, with the likes of former Golden Boot winner, we had Sean Johnson. They have Blake Green, another great half. They have the 2018 Dally M Player of the Year, Roger Tuivasa-Sheck. He has a 44% win rate. He can't even crack 50% wins with this club. And then we'll go to his international resume with the New Zealand Kiwis. His only positive percentage, 55%. You're coaching the second best team in the world. When you look at international football, it sucks to say, but there's Australia, there's England, and there's New Zealand, and you barely coach them to a winning percentage. So much so in the World Cup, they had their first loss to third-tier nations, such as Fiji. I know they defeated them, and I thought they may have lost to Tonga. I may be wrong there.
They did lose to Tonga in the quarterfinals.
Yeah. There you go. They lost to 2 tier 3 nations under Kearney. He is just off his melon. And for the Warriors, I don't know what to say. This team is so inconsistent. I'll hand over to you as I take off my cranky hat, though.
Oh, mate, with the Warriors, I've got here errorful football. I mean, I'll say it now. I'll save a different stat for Stat Attack. 68% completion. I mean, come on. I mean, you don't really win a game. I think Penrith might have had worse than that when they beat the Tigers, but I mean, I can't really see a team with 68% completion winning too many games. Errorful football. I mean, even Roger Tuivasa-Sheck, I think there was a play which led to a try. I think it was off a kick. He just dropped the ball. And it was about 10 metres out. Cowboys scored off of it. It was bad. And I mean, the Cowboys, as we said, they did not have a good game either, but the Warriors were just terrible. And, it's that risky style of football again. Half the time it comes off, half the time it doesn't. Mm-hmm. I mean, yes, it is fine to have a bit of risk in your game. Obviously, it paid paid off for them for a while last year.
Mm-hmm.
However, you just need a bit more structure than what they've got. I
Absolutely.
mean, they need a coach to come in, because it's been the same with the past few coaches. I mean, I can't remember a time where the Warriors have really been a structured team. They play a lot of free-flowing footy. They just, offload here, there, and everywhere. They take risks. They need a coach to come in and, well, a coach that'd be good at that, but I don't think he's ever going to go there. Wayne Bennett, for example, he would tear into them for doing that. They need a coach to come in and take a bit of control and say, okay, I am changing the way that we play. You can't really go in there and say, I don't want to change the way that we play too much, because, it works with the side that we have now, whatever. But, they need a coach to come in and just change it completely. Say, right, we are changing the way that we play and attack. We are focusing on that. We are going to do the best we can to not make errors. We are going to play a more conservative game of rugby league, because, I mean, that on Saturday night proved that free-flowing footy does not always work. And, I've still not... I've got them down to 15th now, just looking. I thought I had them a bit higher, but if they keep playing this way, I cannot see them doing much better. Can you imagine if they were versing Melbourne? They're versing Melbourne this week. Can you imagine if they were versing Melbourne and played like that? I mean, I'm not looking forward to Anzac Day night, I'm telling you that much.
Well, I can remember when they played Melbourne last year and played like that, and the scoreline was 50-10 or something like that.
Yeah, it was their first loss of the season as well.
Oh, there you go. We'll move over to stat attack, guys. You touched on it already. I'll bring it up again. 68% completion for the Warriors. As you said, not enough structure. To me, that's probably a good indication you want to bring in a genuine half with a kicking game and some game management skills, i.e. Adam Kieran, not Peter Hiku. What do you have for stat attack?
For the Warriors, 12 errors. The errors. I mean,
Yep.
I said it before, but I guess this is just the concrete stat for it. 12 errors was not good enough. And as I said, the errors were very poor errors. As I said, Roger Tuivasa-Sheck. Cowboys put up the high ball, goes to take it, just drops it 10 metres out from his line, leads to a try.
How's this? They only completed 26 sets. They had 38 all up. I mean... There's your 12 errors, but just when you put it into perspective like that, it's very ugly. Considering Cowboys 31 completed sets from 37, much better. We'll finish on positives though for the Cowboys. I liked Moose. I thought Josh Maguire was absolutely huge in his 200th NRL game, and I feel he's really stepped up and tried to replace Jason Tamalolo in this side. He ran for 220 metres, he had 85 post-contact and 42 tackles. It was a big effort from Moose. What did you like about the Cowboys?
I liked O'Neill. I know that we were talking about him before, and we were talking about how the Cowboys' backline was, but he was the one shining light in this game for me. Was definitely one of their better players, I've got to say, in a team that, even in this game that they won, there weren't a whole lot of players that stood out, but he was one of them. Yep. And, especially in a back five that is pretty poor. I mean, you've got a half playing at fullback. I mean, not much more I can say on that, but O'Neill was definitely a shining light for me.
Absolutely. We'll go to the Warriors now. I liked Roger Tuivasa-Sheck. I believe it should be a lot higher on the Dally M polls at the moment.
Oh, yeah.
As of last round, he led the NRL in line breaks, tackle breaks, and meters run. It wasn't his best performance, but I feel he was still the best Warrior out there by far.
100%, and he's my positive as well. I guess go to a different topic and go to a topic that you alluded to. Roger Tuivasa-Sheck statistically right now is the best player in our game, and I don't even think he's in the top 10 for the Dally M poll. Is that correct? I think
he was.
Well, Dally M results have literally just come in, so I haven't been able to check them yet. I just saw the notification, and I guess to sort of plug something, when I was filming my Nathan Hindmarsh career retrospective video, which you can see now on YouTube or Facebook, NRL in my opinion. Did you know that Nathan Hindmarsh won 5 Proven Summons medals, which is the people's choice for Player of the Year? That's the fans' choice, but never ever won a Dally M medal. I mean, if 5 times in your career, and they were all in the space of about 7 seasons, if thousands of people who vote consistently think you are the best player, how can you not win the official Player of the Year award, which to me sort of gives me a bit of the opinion that we should probably be prioritising, I know it's sort of a bold statement, prioritising the Proven Summons medal over the Dally M medal. Because, think about it. Dally M medal, it's one person per game gives their opinion on how good a player was. Proven Summons medal, it is thousands of fans who collectively vote for one player to be named the best player in the game for that season. But anyway, that's off topic. I just wanted to quickly get that in. But again, Tuivasa-Sheck was their best player. I know I was talking about that one error, but other than that, he did look pretty good for the Warriors.
Yeah, we'll finish on Tuivasa-Sheck, guys. He has 5 Dally M points. I just checked down. He's currently 25th. That's too low for me. Let's move on to the Dragons versus Seagulls. The St. George Illawarra Dragons defeat the Manly Seagulls 12-10. Now, this wasn't an overly impressive win by the Dragons, but it does make it 4 in a row for the Red V. And when you've won 4 in a row, your confidence starts to grow. We know it's early in the season, and when we look back to previous seasons, we know how strong the Dragons are at the start of the year. They didn't necessarily go on the run from beginning in round 1 this year, but I think this could be the start of it. I think we could see the Dragons go on a little bit of a streak here, and I wouldn't necessarily be surprised if that was to happen. They do have a very tough game next week. They have the Anzac clash against the Roosters. Then they move on to the Parramatta Eels at Bankwest Stadium. Then they move on to the Warriors at Magic Round, and I'll give you guys one more. They then have the Newcastle Knights. Now, aside from that first game against the Roosters, I think those other games are very winnable for the Dragons. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see them go on a little bit of a streak here. What sort of comments have you got for the Dragons from this one?
They did look good. Personally, for the game as a whole, I would almost say that it was my game of the round. As in, it was very close, whereas the Rooster Storm ended up being close, but, Roosters dominated the first half, Melbourne second half, but in this one, it was tight. And, similar stats to Melbourne and Roosters in the sense that it was very, very close. For the Dragons, they just look like a well-oiled machine all round. I guess if you said to me the question that a few people asked me about the Bulldogs, who they should be... Actually, someone did actually ask me this about the Dragons. He said, who should they sign / what position do they need to improve in? I said they don't really need to right now. I can't really pinpoint one position in particular. Maybe in the forge, just add a bit of depth, a bit more depth or whatever, although they look pretty good there as well.
Yeah.
They just look like a well-oiled machine. Hunt and Norman are really coming into a bit of form here, I reckon. And I hate to say it, but they've started playing good since Gareth Widdop's been out. And that's purely because I think his better position was in the halves. Matt Duffy was looking good coming off the bench at fullback. Now that he's at fullback, They look great. I can't really pronounce his first name, but Ravawala, who has been preferred over Zach Lomacz. Michaeli Ravawala has looked pretty good as well. So
he's dangerous.
I just think they look like a well-oiled machine, and the team as a whole looks good.
Yep.
Which you can't say for a lot of teams in the competition currently, other than for me. The Roosters, the Storm, maybe Souths. But other than that, it's the Dragons.
Yeah, you touched on maybe needing a little bit more depth in the forwards. And there's a bit of talk Jack de Belin may be cleared ahead of Thursday's Anzac clash. Certainly nothing 100% clarified there, but it's a chance that he may return, guys. On to the Seagulls now. A little bit of controversy with this one. I watched it on Controversy Corner. Half the panel said it's definitely a penalty. But then former referee boss Bill Harrigan said that Tim Lafai is entitled to stand there because he's facing and looking at the ball. So depending on how you view it, guys, for me and sort of what I've seen penalised already this year, I thought personally it was a penalty. That's only my opinion. I thought the Seagulls were probably unlucky not to get a call for an escort there. But then I'm hearing the term robbed thrown around on my page and everywhere. And guys, you need to really be careful with how you use that word, because there's no guarantee that Daly Chervin slots a conversion from the sideline to even that game. There's just no guarantee that was definitely a robbery. It sort of depends on how you interpret the rules. and how the referees play it out on the field. In rugby league, you make your own luck. If you're good enough, you're good enough. If you're not, you're not. It sucks to say. It's tough. I know Manly fans don't want to hear this, but ultimately your team did fall short. But yeah, I won't go too much further there. I'll hand over to you for the Sea Eagles.
Yeah, I guess for the Seagulls as well, just touching on that, I got a lot of people saying that the ref screwed Manly out of the game. Maybe if it was clearly a penalty. For me, it was more of a 50-50 call. Yes, I am leaning more was a penalty, but you can't really blame the refs for screwing you out of the game when it's a close call. If it's something that's pretty clearly, wrong, let's just say a forward pass is thrown and the referee doesn't call it and it's blatantly forward, maybe you can then say, oh, the ref screwed us out of that one a bit. But I mean, it was a 50-50 call. Manly fans, it went the other way.
Yep.
It's just what happens. I know it sucks. However, I mean, you can't really blame the refs in a 50-50 call.
Exactly.
If they get a 50-50 call wrong, I mean, if it was my team as well, the Titans, I'm probably not going to look too much into it and blame the refs too much because we're human.
It's part of the game.
You know what I mean? We can understand human error.
Yep.
A bit better than the bunker, I guess you could say, with technology. It's a bit more acceptable, guys. I mean,
Well, I will ask this question before we move on to stat attack. It's a yes from me before we start. Do you think the referee should have sent it up to the bunker and had some looks at it from different angles, etc.?
Well, they got the technology. I believe they are allowed to, aren't they?
So you can send it up as no try. So, send it up. I've got no try. I just want to confirm a potential escort on Ruben Garrick. And then bunker can rule on whether we have a penalty or not. I thought that's what should have happened.
Yeah, so even if it's definitely, not a try, you can still send it up to check something else. Okay, cool. Then they should have.
I mean, the technology's there. Why not use it, right?
Yeah. And, I mean, and just on people saying that Manly got robbed as well, just, I guess, to divert on a different point as well, you said that Cherry Evans might not have even gotten the goal. Yeah, well, he could have taken it to goal and point. Ben Hunt slots over a field goal or whatever. So it is one of those really close calls. Again, maybe the bunker should have been used. We've invested all this money into it. This is something it should be used for. I don't want to go off on a bunker tangent. But yeah, 50-50 call.
Yep.
I've said my piece.
All right, for stat attack, I've got written down here, guys, 75 more tackles were made by the Dragons, but they missed 8 less. So I think that's pretty impressive.
Let me just, got to turn the page here looking up.
That's all good.
Yeah, for the Dragons, really good in defence. 374 tackles, 17 missed. Manly missed 25, I guess, to sort of put that into perspective a bit.
Yep.
So a lot more clinical in defence. And you know what? From that stat there, as we said, defence wins games as well. The Dragons' defence won that game because it was such a close encounter. Mm-hmm. And, if Manly were probably a bit more prolific in attack, they wouldn't have to worry about this 50-50 call in the end. As you said, if you're good enough, you're good enough.
Exactly.
You can find a way to get it done. Manly just did.
Now, before Manly fans rock up on our doorsteps with pitchforks, let's move on to stuff we liked. For the Dragons, I really liked Ben Hunt. I think he's hitting some good form pretty early in the season. And, his team just defeated the current Queensland Maroons halfback. He could be pushing his case to earn his Queensland number 7 jersey back.
I liked Corey Norman. I liked Ben Hunt a lot as well, but just to sort of divert it a bit, I'm going to go for the other half. They really look like they are working as halves. Obviously, I think they would have played together a little bit at Brisbane, if not in the top grade, maybe one of the lower grades. Mm-hmm. There is that chemistry there. It is building, and, they really look like... I can't really pinpoint which one of them is the lead half sort of thing. They sort of work together. They work together well. We obviously saw Norman not work together well with Mitch Moses. So, there was a little bit of discussion whether he can play nice with others. And, the likes of a Ben Hunt who, up until, I guess, this season, for the past couple of years has been, moving between that hooker and half role. But I think he's definitely cemented his role in the halves, definitely. And that's with the help of Corey Norman because they both play so well together. So can't say much on that.
Okay, for the Sea Eagles, guys, I liked their set completion rate of 81%. Currently in the NRL right now, they sit 12th on sets completed, and 81% is close to, if not their best completed set percentage. That was such a tongue twister for the season. So, signs of improvement there moving forward. And I think if they can continue to keep completing up around that 81%, they'll continue to improve.
Yeah, for what I liked about Manly, I know I've just bagged on them for needing to be a bit more prolific in attack, but their attack was more on the positive side. To give a couple more stats, they had 1,395 average run meters, which is more than the Dragons, 234 kick return meters, so definitely when they were getting the ball, they were getting it back up. And their passes, they had 234 passes, definitely getting the ball around, and trying to create something. So me looking at that, the efforts there in attack, they've just got to be a bit more prolific and a little bit more clinical in their attack and create a little bit more.
All right, let's move on to our favourite game of the round, no doubt. We'll start with the Gold Coast Titans, 38 points, defeating the Newcastle Knights by 38-14. For the Titans, guys, easily their best performance of 2019. It was an amazing effort when you consider they lost Kevin Proctor in the warm-up and then they lost Ryan James 14 minutes into the game. To lose two influential forwards, one of them being your captain, and still keep that intensity for majority of the match. They did drop off for a little bit there, and that's certainly probably the only blight on the game I can find for the Titans. They didn't play the full 80, but otherwise from that little patch of sort of lapse in concentration, particularly around defense, overall, it was a very impressive win for the Titans moving forward.
On the Titans, I know they're our team and everything, but I've got to say a negative. They weren't convincing, in the sense that I'm talking overall. I'm talking going from this point forward. They weren't convincing for me, as in they didn't put in that full 80. Obviously, they dominated the first half, but in the second half, for about 20 to 25 minutes, Newcastle were the better side, I'd argue. And, when Newcastle started racking up a couple of tries, I thought, oh, that's right, I'm watching the Titans. They're probably going to lose 30 to 28.
Yep.
And I genuinely thought that. Like, I was sitting there, the Titans were probably still winning by, double digits. But I was sitting there and I was thinking, I'm just waiting for Newcastle to come back here. But the Titans did end up picking up again. But, I mean, I'm not that convinced. And the reason why I bring this up, I have people saying to me, oh, great win by the Titans. They should, go on from here. They'll go on a winning streak. Maybe they'll finish in the 8. I get people messaging me that. And I sort of say to them, I don't think they will at the moment. I've got them out of the 8 now, and they are not getting back in until I see a full 80 minutes where the Titans are the better side, because I have not seen that at all this season. I am not going to be confident in the Titans as a potential top 8 side, where, a lot of people are starting to see them as that again. I mean, if the Titans win next week, they're potentially in the top 8, which is crazy to think a couple of weeks ago. Their season was almost over. People were almost ruling them out. But yeah, I don't see them as a legitimate top 8 contender until I see that 80 minutes of dominance.
Okay, we'll move on to the Newcastle Knights. For me, guys, I thought it was a pretty poor performance all round. I think there's something horribly wrong at this club. To come into this game with only one win and on a 4 or 5 game losing streak, and to sort of rock up without that attitude or that effort. And you guys know when I can just say without that attitude or that effort, and you know exactly what I'm talking about if you're a rugby league fan. That was never there for the Knights, especially in that first 40. In the second half, as you touched on, they were able to gather some momentum and the belief creeped in. But just to not rock up with that mentality initially is very concerning signs for the Knights. I put it down to probably 3 things, guys. Number 1, there's a level of expectation attached to the Knights at the moment, and in some ways I believe they may have been overhyped this preseason. Now, I know they made some good signings, but signings It takes time to build that chemistry and have the cohesion throughout a squad. When we look at the Knights of recent years, we're looking at a team that's coming off a bottom 8 and 3 wooden spoons before that. There's not too many teams that be coming off years like that where we'd be predicting them for a top 8 finish. Given the Eels, they finished last year, and people instantly for 2019 had ruled them out and had them as the wooden spooners again.
Yeah.
We factor in Knights have put up with 4 years of that. So it is weird that we've sort of all just changed our mentality on the back of a few signings. Secondly, I don't believe Mitchell Pearce is handling the sole captain's sheet.
I'm going to have my piece on Pearce. I'm sorry, but go right ahead. I'm sorry. I'll get to that in a minute.
He's just not... He's struggling as the halfback of this team, first and foremost, without factoring in captaincy. Now, I know he has had a halves partnership change. A lot of his preseason was focused on his halves partnership of him and Ponga, which is obviously no more. But I just think for a former New South Wales rep and a player of Pearce's calibre, that excuse doesn't really fly for me. And I do expect a little bit more out of Pearce. I would like to see him share co-captaincy with David Klemmer. I know Klemmer's new to that club, but he is the standout forward for them week in, week out so far. And if anything, he plays with pride in that jersey, despite of only playing a couple games in the red and blue. And last, guys, I've got to touch on Nathan Brown. I don't think he's as good as coach as sort of he's been made out to be. He's a very good recruiter. I'm not disputing that. I believe he's won the Super League with St. Helens.
Yeah, but I mean, winning the Super League with St. Helens is almost like playing Rugby League Live 4 on rookie difficulty. I think they're undefeated at the moment. I'm sorry if I'm wrong, but They are an amazing side. I think, for all due respect, you put Garth Brennan into St. Helens and they're probably still at the same spot. They've got a really good side, probably a side that could do well in the NRL.
Yeah, which sort of brings me back to the point that I just don't think Brownie has as many accolades and not as well experienced as other NRL coaches. I would say if the Knights potentially lose another 2 in a row, his job is under threat. I'd say the club would potentially be looking to move him on. Given his current contract, he can just be booted from the door. No ifs or buts. I'll go over to you. What are your match comments for the Knights?
Okay, just quickly, no Newcastle urgency. And I think this is something that Matty Johns brought up constantly when he was talking about the game, who is, Newcastle legend. So, it's definitely something to take note of when he's bagging his team out.
Yeah.
He said, and I agree, in defence especially, they just didn't look like they wanted to be there. He brought up the point going into this one. Titans were 1-5, Newcastle 1-5, and he said only one team showed up desperate to get that second win, and it was the Titans. And Newcastle just did not look like they had urgency. Now, you had your angry cap on before for a rant. I'm just going to grab a random cap here, one of my grand final caps. We got 2015 grand final cap. All right. That's not going to fit properly, but who cares? Okay, this has to do with Mitchell Pearce, and it has to do with commentators. I know I messaged you about this a couple of days ago, and I know I made those pretty crap memes. Mitchell Pearce is not that influential as he's being hyped up to be, and I don't know if it's the media being encouraged to hype up, certain bigger name players because he is a bigger name player. With all due respect, when Mitchell Pearce is playing well, he's playing really well, and he deserves these comments. Heading into the game, they didn't talk about they didn't really talk about the Titans who had just won their first game of the season and were looking good. No, they were focusing on a side that had just lost their past 4, and they were saying, I think Mitchell Pearce is really going to step up and really going to be influential. He's put his hand up. They've just lost four straight. He has not looked that good. Mm-hmm. And during the game as well, they were hyping him up. The Titans were winning by 20 points, and they were saying, Mitchell Pearce is going to start going good now, or, Mitchell Pearce has been all right. I barely heard them talk about the team winning by goddamn 20 points. Mitchell Pearce bombs a try under the post, knocks the ball on. They take that as an opportunity to talk about how good he is. I can't remember exactly what they said, but they said, he's putting in the effort today. He's really, trying his hardest. Mm-hmm. He knocked the ball on over the line. I mean, yes, Mitchell Pearce is a good player. We all know that. However, when he bombs a try under the post and when his team is down by 22 points, it's okay to say Pearce is probably a bit out of form. it wouldn't kill you to say that because at the moment the fans are watching, and I've seen other people say this as well. People were saying it a bit about the commentators, what they've been saying about Ponga. It's a bit embarrassing to see commentators talk about how good someone is when they've been out of form for a while. Someone that I remember they used to do it with, and I know was your favourite player of all time, and I'm definitely not disputing how good of a player he was. But when Jared Hayne was out of form, they still hyped him up. You know what I mean? Sometimes Jared Hayne was a bit out of form, and it's not Mitchell Pearce's fault, obviously. It's obviously the people hyping him up, but he's more gone into that role. That adds a lot more pressure on him, a lot more eyes on him. They're saying, okay, these experts, these commentators are talking about how good Mitchell Pearce is. We're going to focus and watch him in this game. What does he do? Knocks the ball on under the post. You know, has a pretty average game. Is definitely not influential as they're hyping him up to be, because if he was influential, he would be having a lot better games. And, you know, when Mitchell Pearce is influential and when he is playing well, generally his team does win. However, this has not been happening. So please, for God's sake, do not hype him up as much as you can. I think I might have even heard a couple of commentators put him in the mix for Origin. I mean, are you serious? Like, honest to God, are you serious? I mean, Mitchell Moses has been having an all right season, and I've heard them mention him for Origin, and I still don't think Moses should be picked for Origin. Why the hell should Mitchell Pearce be in the conversation for Origin? Not just because of his Origin resume, which is pretty crap, because of the way his team, Newcastle, have been playing, the team that he captains. Again, Mitchell Pearce, you're a great player. However, you've been out of form, and I'm sorry that the commentators are trying to hype you up when really they should be saying, yeah, you know, Pearce hasn't been playing that well. And, you know, that might take a bit of pressure off him, and God forbid he starts playing a bit better, which he can. I feel like he's under a bit of pressure, and it's mainly because of all these people in the media hyping him up. Why? I mean, there's no point. They've been doing it a little bit with Ponga as well, but the main focus has been on Pearce. I'm sorry for that rant. It's pretty much had nothing to do with this game. Well, a little bit. But I mean, in this one as well, they did it so much that I sort of couldn't focus on the game a bit because I thought, and, you know, generally the commentators are good on Fox, I believe, but I was just sitting there thinking, I mean, come on, guys, this is getting so bad that it's honestly not even a joke anymore. I mean, in this game, he was playing that bad that them trying to make excuses and trying to, you know, hype him up, it was blatantly just not going to work. I thought, Jesus Christ.
Well, you're right. Mitchell Pearce never typically has handled pressure too well in his career. We think back to the Chooks. They won the minor premiership a lot from the years 2010, 2013, maybe even 2014. I'm not sure, but I know at least 3 times, maybe more, they won the minor premiership and didn't go on to win the competition.
I think it was, sorry, just to butt in, I think it was 13, 14, 15. They won the comp in 2013. Yep. Other than that, they didn't. And, you know, that just goes to show in the Origin arena as well, cannot handle the pressure. He's a great club player. But when it gets to those big game situations, I mean...
Yeah, I don't want to rag on Mitchell Pearce for Origin because I feel like it's been done a million times, but you are right. Hasn't handled that sort of pressure cooker. And then one other example, Cooper Cronk joins the Sydney Roosters. And he leaves. Obviously, you know, you can argue he was wrong done. They shouldn't have signed Cooper Cronk, but perhaps it was the pressure that he would have to step up and rise his game to another level with Cronk. He didn't think he could do so. I'm not sure, but let's move on to stat attack. I've got the Titans completing 89%. That's the highest they've completed at this year. It was very impressive. In comparison, the Knights completed a mediocre 70%.
Yeah, I've got the Titans 89% completion rate as well. It was amazing. When I saw that stat, even though the Titans had dominated the game, I had to look at it going, really? Because it was a lot better than a lot of sides who had won during this week. And you would see something like that from a Melbourne, from a Sydney. Yeah. And for me, for the Knights, you know, their errors, 12 errors, they had the same amount as the Warriors.
Yep,
that sort of coincides with your stat for them. You know, was it 70% completion rate?
Correct.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah, just far too many errors to keep yourself in a game.
I could pretty much copy-paste what I said about the Warriors for Newcastle in this one.
There you go. We'll move on to stuff we liked. For the Titans, guys, I really liked Tyrone Roberts stepping up. I
Yeah.
wasn't certain if he would be able to bring his Super League form back to the NRL. And typically, he has been a second string, not a second string half, sort of the Robin, not the dominant half at a club, is what I'm trying to express there. Sorry. We go back to when the Titans last made finals in 2016. Ash Taylor was the dominant half, and Tyrone Roberts was his Robin, if you will. But I almost feel Tyrone Roberts is the dominant half of the Titans at the moment, and certainly his form would suggest so.
Yeah, and it's worked. I mean, and it's not a bad thing. I forgot Ash Taylor was even there because Roberts was playing so good. It just works when Roberts is the dominant half, and I mean it. I agreed with it, but it pissed me off at the same time. I'm bringing in the commentators again, but they said this is when the Titans are up by 20 points as well. They're like, "Oh, where's Ash Taylor been this game? We haven't seen much of him." Which, yes, I agreed with, but it also works with Roberts being the dominant half. And another reason why it pissed me off is because I'm going to say quickly, they were ragging on about how good Mitchell Pearce is, and his team were down by about 22, but then they go to the opposition half, bag on him when his team's up by about 22. Anyway, I need to shut up about this. But anyway, it worked. And Tyrone Roberts had a really good game. I would have had him as well. But other than that, I really like Jai Arrow. I mean, I believe he is the only Titans, well, maybe not after yesterday, but up until that game, he was the only Titans player in their forward pack that was averaging over 100 run meters per game. Or it was either 100 or... I think it was 100 run meters. But
how can you not like Jairo? He's just incredible. I sent him a text last night, and I was like, legit, like you are the effing man. I was like, every week you effing turn up for us. You're a effing legend. I was so happy, man.
Yeah. I think Roberts and Arrow are going to have to go in for back surgery in a couple of weeks because they're just carrying this team.
They are at the moment. For the Knights, guys, I liked Kalen Ponga back at fullback. I understand it wasn't his first game back in that position, but we're seeing the old KP return, and we're seeing him return back to career best form. He had 100% kick defusal, guys, so he didn't stuff up on any grubbers or any bombs. He had the most meters and line breaks in the entire game from both teams. So I really like what I saw out of KP, even though it was against my team.
Yeah, look, I got to agree with Ponga as well. He's the only sort of, to me, looked even a little bit like he was having a good game. Whenever he had the ball, even if he didn't end up doing anything, I was on the edge of my seat. You know what I mean? Whenever I saw him, I thought, Jesus Christ.
He's dangerous.
And am I allowed to swear on here? If not, I won't. But am I allowed?
You can swear if you want, yeah.
Can I drop an F-bomb? Because...
you must.
I mean, okay, I won't say the actual word, but when Ponga made that little break, I think he got past Philip Sami, and he ended up getting taken down. And he had the ball in the goal line, and he just got through a little bit, and I went... It's fucking Ponga. And I was like, gee, because I when you see Ponga do that, he generally goes all the way. And I thought, Jesus Christ, whenever he had the ball.
You know what? I echoed the exact same words. OF as soon as he got in the clear. He is pure dangerous. Let's move on to Sunday Arvo footy. The Canberra Raiders defeat the Brisbane Broncos 26-22. For me, the Raiders are a top 4 side indeed. They look superb at the moment. They sit equal first on the ladder, and they've completely taken me by surprise in 2019. I thought having a smaller forward pack would diminish the way they play and affect them in a negative way. In fact, it's done the opposite. They've changed up how they play a little bit. It's not suiting players like Josh Hodgson as much, but their back rowers, particularly around the edges, dangerous centres in Croker and BJ Leilua. It's just working at the moment for the Raiders. They look great. I wouldn't say this was a clinical performance because they Broncos almost fought their way back into it. But in some ways, I believe that's a positive for the Raiders, guys. You're thinking I'm crazy. I'm telling you, remember last year, they weren't the Canberra Raiders, they were the Canberra Faders. And I think they've almost removed that tag this year because they have been able to withhold a couple second half raids from opposition teams.
Yeah, with the Raiders, they are one of those teams at the moment who are just a well-oiled machine and pretty much have no faults across their starting 13. So I would like to apologise for what I said before. I'd like to add the teams that look good across the pitch at the moment are the Roosters, the Dragons, the Storm, and the Raiders. However,
Okay.
I'm not a believer. I'm not. I mean, just from the past few years, from what we've seen from teams in general, and I know this is a bit of a bold statement because they are doing really well at the moment. I have got them finishing higher than I did once I did my shake-up of my predictions, but I've got them 10th. Now, yes, I know a lot of people have got them as a top 4 side. Let's cast back to last year. At this point in the season, I believe both the Dragons and the Warriors were undefeated. They both just snuck into the top 8. And from what I've seen from the Raiders in the past, their history probably isn't as good as the Dragons coming into a season where, for me personally, you can't back them at this point in the season to finish in the top 4. I can see why people would have them in the 8. I've got them challenging for this, but I've got them 10th. Let's look at the Dragons for like the past 5 years. May premiers. They've looked like winning the comp at this point in the season. Raiders look like they might win the comp at this point in the season. I can't see it. You know, the Dragons haven't had as good a start. Obviously, they've just won 4 in a row, but they haven't had as good a start as they have in past years where they've been first on the ladder. I think this year we might have a new May premiers in the Raiders. I just think after about May, they'll drop down. We generally don't get an idea of where teams will finish until, for me, about round 12 to 14, realistically, when teams mathematically start being unable to finish in certain positions. So I think, yes, we can hype the Raiders up a bit right now. They are looking good at the moment. But from what we've seen in the past, they haven't made too many changes. For me, they've got the top 2 signings of the season. Chanze Nickel-Klodstad and Bateman coming in. So, look, they haven't made too many changes. So let's just say they keep playing well. We've seen in the past the rest of the team can play pretty crap. So, yes, they are playing to their potential at the moment, but there's a very good chance, going off of history. I love to go off history, don't I? I'm a bit of an arsehole, but there's a very good chance that they could still drop down. And look, they only just beat a team in the Broncos who everyone else had in top 4 at the start of the season, but they've been woeful, and they just beat them. So
yeah, well, we'll talk about
on this day. Great effort.
All right, we'll talk about the Broncos in a little bit more depth. I thought it was a better performance by the team, but they're still miles away from what we know they're capable of. Yeah. Their spine continues to struggle, guys. I sound like a broken record. I've said this after every game this year, but I think it's finally time for Anthony Seibold. He needs to bite the bullet and make some big changes. Whether that involves dropping Milford, Nikorima, or Darius Boyd, I'm not so sure. If I had to make the decision, guys, I'd be dropping Nikorima to the bench. I'd be bringing in Tommy Dearden. I'd be bringing in Sean O'Sullivan. And I believe they have another, they got Corey Pakes, and I believe there's another young half at the club also. So they do have some younger game managers. Of the options available, I like Sean O'Sullivan. He has tasted first grade before. I'd bring him in at halfback. I'd tell Milford, I want you to take on more of a running role. We don't want you trying to direct and manage because you suck at it. And I'd be dropping Nikorima back to 14, and I'd be having him come on as the hooker at about the 60-minute mark because McCullough offers a lot in defense, but not so much in attack. They're the changes I would make for the Broncos, but what did you think of their performance?
As you said, a lot better, but it's still not up to expectation. There's not much. Look, I can't really say much more than that. In this game specifically, yes, they did look a lot better. The halves were threatening at times, and they did do some good things, but it's not what we expect of a Brisbane Broncos halves. I mean, yeah. Look, I agree with probably dropping Nikorima for Sean O'Sullivan. So I'll probably just sort of look at why maybe I wouldn't drop the other two. Milford, great player. He's just playing the wrong type of halves role, which you brought up before. He needs to play a bit more of a running role. Darius Boyd, they're purely not going to drop because A, he's the captain. 2, I don't know the exact amount of money he's on, but I believe he's on a fair amount of money. So that maybe they should drop him, but they are not going to drop Darius Boyd. I can tell you that now. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and look, the Fords just haven't looked that good either. I mean, we were hyping them up at the start of the year. Well, not me. Smart old me still had them 13th while you were all bagging me. And the reason why they were bagging me is because they've got such a young, talented forward pack. Yeah, but they've also got such an inexperienced forward pack that has not played much footy together.
Yeah.
And, I think youth is great. They've got too much youth, as in
Not enough experience.
not enough experience, not enough leaders in that side.
Yep.
It's a bunch of talented players that in a couple of years could win a competition together. But there's no one putting the hand up and being a leader. There's no one experienced enough to put the hand up and lead because they've not had enough first grade experience. I mean, they've got Gillett, they've got Glenn, who are their only real experienced front rowers.
Yeah, I mean,
They've
genuinely, they probably shouldn't have let go of Moose, you would think.
Yeah, they've lost Moose. Sam Thaide's retired. I mean, yes, one of those two guys could be the leader, but it's a bit hard to be a leader when there's that much youth. There's not enough experienced players playing alongside you to sort of get what you're trying to lead straight away. So it's very hard to be a leader in that Brisbane Broncos side, and that's what they need, a leader.
Yeah.
Surely. Yeah.
Let's jump across to stat attack here. I couldn't find anything of interest too much, but for the Raiders, they put up 4 bombs and 2 grubbers. The Broncos diffused them at a rate of 57%, very poor. In comparison, the Broncos put up 10 bombs and 7 grubbers, and 92% were diffused by Chance, Nickel, Klogstad, and they're back to their Kotrick and Rapana. So obviously, you got 6 kicks there, diffused at 57%, compared to 17 kicks diffused at 92% by the Raiders. So pretty poor work there by the Broncos.
Yeah, look, for my stat attack, it sort of incorporates both sides. It's in defence. Again, it's not too much, but Canberra, 373 tackles. They had less missed tackles than the Broncos. I didn't get down the exact number, but I know that they had a bit less. And Broncos had 20 ineffective tackles to the Raiders 11. So for me, the Raiders looked better in defence, and that's probably what got them over the line again. Defence wins games.
Yeah. Let's move on to what we liked, guys. For the Raiders, I liked Chance Nickel Klogstad. I thought he was very brave to stay on the field with that knee injury. For an update, guys, I spoke to Chance earlier today. I'll just bring up the text to be 100% correct with this. He said he's well, however, he will need to have scans tomorrow on Tuesday and see what he has to do to get it right and see where he goes from there. So he's not sure what the injury is at the moment, but he will have to have scans. But look, him staying on the field, for me, won them the game. It was a close scoreline, and I think without him, they may have lost. You think about losing your fullback. Likely what would have had to happen would have been, I think Nick Kotrick would have went to fullback, Croker would have went to the wing, Bateman would have went to centre, or Whitehead to centre. But then you lose that element of talk, and you're changing your spine. I think if Chance Nickel Klogstad went off, they would have lost that game. And more on his brave effort, he had the most meters from both sides whilst carrying a pretty serious knee injury. So I really liked his performance.
Yeah, so influential, and he has been throughout the season as well. Chance Nickel Klogstad. In an era where we have a lot of great fullbacks at the moment, he's one of the best in the game. And that's saying something for someone who, when signing with Canberra, we thought, okay, he'll definitely start the season, but he's a player that I could see getting dropped if he doesn't play that well. But at the moment, he's been one of their best players. For my, thumbs up good thing about Canberra is I'm not going to mention Bateman or Nickel Klogstad because we go on about those guys a lot. They're amazing. I liked Leilua and I liked Croker. They both looked good to me in this game. If you're purely looking at centres, I know you can't really call them a centre combination because obviously centres are on opposite sides of the field.
Yep.
If you're purely looking at centres, who are the best centre pairings in the game? They're probably up there. I'd say they're the best in the game. You got Leilua, who has got a bit of that X factor that we like mentioning, and Croker is a leader. Brisbane could do with Jared Croker at the moment because he's a leader. He very good at leading a side. And you know what? The last time the Raiders had a number 3 that was also a goal kicker, that was also their captain, that also played in the centres, that was Mal Meninga. And you know what? Jared Croker might not get talked about as much as Mal, but for Canberra, he has been probably about as influential for the Raiders as Mal Meninga was back in the day.
Okay.
Great player.
Yeah, great centre pairing. Probably the Cooper and Gasnier of modern times, guys. We'll move on to my like for the Broncos. Well, I liked Payne Haas. He played the full 80, which is just so impressive from a teenage prop to do that in the NRL. There's not many teenage props that play in the NRL, let alone playing a full 80 minutes. I thought that was very impressive.
With Haas, I'd say it was a great individual effort, but that's where the inexperience comes in when you're playing as a unit. Definitely a great individual effort from Haas. But for me, I know we've ragged on him before, but I'm going to say I liked Nikorima and Hunt at certain times. At certain times, they looked threatening. At certain times, they were causing a bit of trouble for the Canberra defence.
Yep.
But it wasn't sort of a full 80 thing, but I will give props to them because they, as a halves pairing, looked a lot better in this one than they have in past games this year. So hopefully for Broncos fans, that's something we can see more of in the future. Yeah,
they were very dangerous in patches, guys. We move on to Monday Night Footy, the last game. Nearing on an hour and a half here, guys. Stick with us. The Eels, super impressive. Playing without their star player, Ferguson. Without Ferguson, I thought they would struggle, especially when you go back and look how much they missed him last week. They missed him a lot. This was a team that just turned up. They turned up to Chris and Bankwest in style. I sort of wanted to change my tip before the game when I heard the crowd roar. I felt the atmosphere through my TV. I saw the Eels on the field shaking hands with all previous club legends. I thought Moses and Gutherson in particular were great. And I think the club needs to work on and really prioritise re-signing that pair pretty soon. What have you got for the Eels?
I mean, it was an amazing performance watching it. Obviously, we'll go into a little bit of a surprise with the stats in a minute. We talked about this off camera a little bit, but the Eels just did look amazing. And you know what? Ferguson may have been out, but they had an 18th man there, and their 18th man's name was Bankwest Stadium. I mean, blue and gold everywhere.
Yeah.
It just looked amazing. It's an amazing stadium. I'm going to digress for a moment just to talk about the stadium because holy hell, that is one amazing stadium. You could halve that crowd, have 10,000 in there a week, which is a bit below the NRL average and around the Eels average. The atmosphere is still going to be amazing. But the way that the stadium is designed, and how cool was it watching the players walk through the fans to walk out of the sheds.
Yeah.
Oh my God. I believe that over in England, Tottenham Hotspur, who have just opened up their new stadium, Premier League side, have something similar to that where they've got, glass walls in between them where fans can stand and watch them walk out. No glass walls here, we're amongst the people. And that's an amazing concept to see. And as I saw Parramatta walk out, I know, obviously the on-field effort is the main thing, but as I saw Parramatta walking out, you touched on those legends. As I saw them walking out through the sheds when they had all those Parramatta fans there, cheering them on as they were walking out. I thought, there's no way Parramatta are losing this. And when the Tigers were walking out through the Parramatta supporters, they were giving them crap. I heard people say, "Oh, the Eels." Yeah.
Did you hear someone said to Josh Aloiai, he goes, "You're a dead man walking."
Yeah. Exactly.
And Josh sort of turned around and was like, "What the hell?"
I know.
They were giving it to him as they walked out. Dead man walking. One of them kept screaming. That was hilarious.
If the Parramatta supporters, as I said, even if there's only 10,000 of them there a week, if they can create that, type of atmosphere week in, week out at that stadium, which they've got the ability to do so now, teams may beat Parramatta there, but it is going to be really hard to beat Parramatta there. Because,
Yeah, great stadium. We'll move on to the Tigers. I don't know what to say here, Oz. It was an abomination from start to finish. They were blown off the park. There's nothing they can take from this game. There's no positives from this game. really all they can do is put this horror performance behind them and really focus on moving on next week and bouncing back like the Parramatta Eels did. And I'll get more onto that a bit later when I get to my like point. But what have you got for the Tigers?
I've literally written here, no excuse for the Tigers. There is no reason for them to go out and get beaten by 45 points, especially with the effort that we've seen them, put in games this season.
Yep.
They've looked amazing at points this season. However, that performance just should not be allowed. In defence, they were so leaky. They were leaving gaps everywhere. They were missing tackles that most teams would get easily. Normal players, they'd just be missing tackles. You cannot use the stadium as an excuse for that. We're using it as an excuse almost for Parramatta winning by that much. But you can never use that as an excuse for losing that much. Oh, yeah, it was Parramatta's new stadium. It's a stadium that during the week the Tigers were claiming, no, this is actually our home ground. Definitely isn't now. Not when you've put in that performance. I mean, Jesus Christ. Mitchell Moses in the post-match interview said, well, it's not the Tigers' jungle anymore. And I said, you know what? That's a good point. Definitely isn't. But yeah, you can't use the stadium as an excuse. Look, I could probably give the Tigers a pass if they had lost maybe within 10 points or something. Maybe I could go, okay, the big game occasion, Para's new home ground, but you do not lose by 45 points. Oh my God. And I can't even, other than, being a bit leaky in defence, I can't pinpoint other areas where they were bad because we'll get onto the stats. A bit surprising. So it's just a really weird one, but I can definitely say needs to be more effort from the Tigers. Similar to Newcastle yesterday, need more urgency.
Yeah, well, one team turned up for the occasion and the other quite simply didn't. As we move on to stat attack, the Eels guys had more errors and more missed tackles despite winning by 45 points. I thought that was a pretty strange stat as I was going through, but I'll keep it nice and simple and I'll hand over to you to finish off stat attack.
Yep, so with the Eels, just to sort of... what's the word I'm looking for? Sort of go a little bit more in depth with the errors in particular. They had 13 errors, which is more than Newcastle did yesterday and more than the Warriors did the night before. But you wouldn't be able to tell watching it, would you? I mean, Jesus Christ. And they had 31 missed tackles. Look, and the Tigers, I think it was 59% possession to the Eels. So that's where the Tigers really got let down. They didn't have much of the ball. If they had more of the ball, we'd probably see a bit of a closer ball game. And the Tigers as well, something else to touch on. Tigers had an 81% completion rate. I believe in the first half for a while, I think they were about 7 from 7. And they were still down by about 20 points. And the Eels had a 75% completion rate. So there's not a lot we can talk about the stats because they definitely do not mirror the result of the game. So it's hard to say. The Eels probably do need to improve on those errors, on making those tackles. But, what can you do when you win by 45 points?
For the last time of this week's wrap-up, let's go to what we liked. I liked the Eels' very improved attack. They had 0 points last week, but they bounced back with 51 this week. I think that's absolutely incredible.
Yeah, the Eels, for me, in particular, I love Clint Gutherson's leadership. He really proved that out there today as well. I believe at the moment he is the best captain in our game. And I know we've got Cameron Smith still playing, which is saying something.
Yeah.
Clint Gutherson, when his players are doing well, he'll hype them up. But when they are playing bad, he is the only captain visibly that will rip into someone. In front of thousands watching in the stadium and people watching at home, I generally tend to think that captains probably play down, giving other players a bit of a serve, when the cameras are around, when people are watching, just in case, it gets into the media and they say, oh, is there a little bit of, a little bit of controversy going on behind the sheds, which it really isn't. It gets played up. It's just a captain being a captain. That's what Clint Gutherson does. I mean, obviously didn't do it this week because they were amazing, but I've seen weeks in the past where they haven't been playing as well. He's grabbed someone aside and has literally just, had his piece and then, gone back to playing. And that's what a good captain should do. A great leader out there today. He really felt like, not the centerpiece, because I feel like that was more Mitch Moses, who had a great game, but Gutherson was definitely having an input in this game, and the Eels were letting him do his thing with the ball. They gave him a lot of freedom the rest of the side, and when you give Gutherson that freedom, he can be deadly, and he was today.
Yeah, definitely. Clint Gutherson, the sort of leader that puts his heart on his sleeve and leads by example each week. We'll move on to the Tigers. Look, it was hard to find something. 81% completion rate I
Yep.
liked, and I liked that they had less missed tackles despite the scoreline.
I mean, I've got to agree with that. It's just really weird. The only positive you can go off is their stats. So I'm going to say they had good stats.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, that wraps up a very extended round 6 wrap up. We went for about an hour and a half. So if you've made it this far, we do really appreciate you sticking by. And if you'd like to leave some of your match comments in the comment section below on YouTube,
Yep.
me and Oz will go through and check them out. Until next time, guys. Oz, I'm using the set of 6 background so you can point up at all your social media handles. Both of our handles are above us, guys, if you want to follow us on any of those platforms. Until next week, guys, thanks for joining us, and I'll hand over to you, Oz, to say goodbye.
Yeah, look, we'll likely see you guys on Wednesday for the next episode of the Set of Six podcast. Can't wait for it. I don't know what else to say. I usually come up with some, farewell thing, but I haven't been able to think of one. So, goodbye.
We'll see you Wednesday, guys, for the Set of 6 podcast.